I'm Charles, and you're watching The State of the Republic. This week's show has been recorded on a cell phone because of some issues with my computer. This week began with a bang. Monday opened with former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort and the Trump campaign liaison with the RNC, Rick Gates, being formally indicted by and arrested under the direction of Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. The indictment had relatively little to do with the Trump-Russia collusion angle in terms of direct contact, and instead focused primarily on Gates and Manafort's foreign financial shenanigans. Manafort and Gates stand accused of conspiracy against the United States, conspiracy to commit money laundering, violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, making false or misleading statements, and multiple counts of failing to file proper foreign financial and banking reports. The duo are suspected of laundering large amounts of funds from Russia and Russian organized crime, primarily through Cyprus. Manafort and Gates have pled not guilty to the charges and have been placed under house arrest under a $10 million and $5 million bail, respectively. Manafort and Gates are both considered flight risks thanks to the nebulous nature of their finances, and Manafort himself apparently had 3 separate passports under different numbers and visited foreign countries under aliases. If convicted, Manafort faces 12 to 15 years in prison, and Gates faces 10 to 12 years in prison. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross is likely next on the chopping block in terms of financial crimes, as he was the vice chair and chief investor in the Bank of Cyprus, and already had significant issues over attempting to hide $2 billion in assets on his financial disclosures. New leaks from the Paradise Papers have revealed business links between Ross and the Putin family. The same leaks also revealed that Russia funded investments in Twitter and Facebook through an associate of Jared Kushner. However, there was also significant news related directly to collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos was previously reported to have tried to set up a meeting between Trump and his advisors and Russian representatives. It has since been revealed that Papadopoulos was arrested in July, and his plea bargain deal recently came into effect. Papadopoulos has confessed to lying to FBI agents about his contacts with Russian representatives, who in their meetings with him promised him information against the Clintons. Trump surrogates have claimed that Papadopoulos was basically the coffee boy, but evidence suggests otherwise, as Trump name-checked him as a foreign policy advisor during the campaign. He spoke on Trump's behalf in Greece after the election, and there are photos of Papadopoulos sitting at the table for meetings and panels with Trump, Jeff Sessions, Bob Corker, and other key figures. In related news, Trump ally and nominee for the position of USDA chief scientist, Sam Clovis, has testified before Mueller's grand jury. Papadopoulos communicated with Clovis about Russian meetings, and Clovis gave his written approval in an email. Clovis testified to the grand jury apparently without informing the administration, and his nomination for the position of USDA chief scientist has been withdrawn. It should be noted that Clovis had no previous scientific experience and was not qualified for the job in the first place. Jeff Sessions ran the Trump campaign's foreign policy team, and these same Russia meetings were also mentioned to him, and he has since been forced to acknowledge this. Sessions perjured himself in previous testimony to Congress, where he claimed he didn't meet with any Russians and was unaware of any such meetings. Sessions has suddenly recovered his memory, though, and now remembers that he did sink Papadopoulos' idea of contacting the Russians. Trump campaign advisor Carter Page and Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner are also reportedly cooperating to some degree, with Page testifying for hours before Congress and disclosing Sessions knew about Page's trip to Russia. Kushner is handing over documents to Mueller's team. Separately, former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is also widely known to be a major target of the investigation. Flynn is reportedly under investigation primarily for criminal activities related to some sort of harebrained scheme to kidnap a Turkish dissident in cooperation with Turkish officials. The case against Flynn was substantially boosted by the fact that former CIA director and Trump aide James Woolsey is now cooperating with Mueller's probe. Trump responded as expected by firing Dana Buente, the U.S. Attorney for Eastern Virginia, where the grand jury against Flynn was placed. Nevertheless, Mueller is now reported to have enough evidence to charge both Flynn and his son. The congressional investigations in these matters are proceeding relatively slowly, but Congress made a point of dragging in and then raking over the coals representatives from the major tech companies. Companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google have taken significant flack for allowing these divisive Russian ads, and several senators have introduced a bipartisan bill requiring disclosure of who pays for online political ads. Mitch McConnell at this point is opposed to this. Federal prosecutors are now reportedly considering prosecuting 6 Russian government officials linked to the hacking of the DNC. Congress has also released some of the highly divisive ads paid for by the Russians. During the campaign, the Trump campaign's data arm was a Bannon-controlled company called Cambridge Analytica. The company is suspected of coordinating with the Russians, using the Russian-hacked WikiLeaks emails heavily, and of possibly using voter data stolen by the Russians to help target voters. Cambridge Analytica and most of Bannon's other efforts were backed by the Mercer family, a bunch of far-right hedge funders. Robert Mercer has since stepped down from his hedge fund, Renaissance Technologies, and has also distanced himself from Bannon, Cambridge Analytica, and Breitbart. Russians aren't the only ones suspected of screwing with the vote totals and vote counts, though. The AP reported that Georgia officials wiped an election server that was the subject of a lawsuit relating to trying to figure out whether the election had been hacked. Right-wing media outlets have for the most part either attempted to avoid covering these developments at all, or beating the drum about made-up Democratic scandals. Several Republican congresspeople are actively trying to fire Mueller. Trump himself publicly demanded investigations into his political opponents, a la Nixon. Mueller's expanding investigation is seriously jeopardizing what little remains of Trump's presidency, and there have been reports of trial balloons being floated ranging from Trump not seeking re-election to Trump resigning from office. The administration is also under fire for other non-Russia-related scandals as well. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, and his company is now under investigation by the Maryland Attorney General relating to their treatment of tenants in their housing developments. House Democrats on the Oversight Committee are also suing the General Services Administration for failing to comply with laws requiring the GSA to disclose information to the Oversight Committee, and House Democrats are suing for records related to Trump's D.C. hotel and receiving foreign payments at that hotel. At this particular moment, Trump is taking his little shit show on the road, with a multi-day trip to Asia. The trip is for the most part not expected to go particularly well, and the main hope is that he doesn't do too much damage. But the most interesting part of the trip is that Trump will be meeting Vladimir Putin, ostensibly to discuss North Korea. Meanwhile, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, chose to make 2 rather suspicious trips to Saudi Arabia in the past week, as Trump himself tweeted to encourage the selling of the shares of the Saudi-owned state oil company Aramco stock publicly on the New York Stock Exchange. In the aftermath of these actions, the Saudi crown prince seems to have embarked on a partial coup under the guise of an anti-corruption sweep, and the Saudi government has also inked a deal on oil production with Russia, as well as a major arms deal. Conservatives are also continuing their efforts to privatize public education. The Koch network is preparing a massive privatization push on all levels, and are preparing to expend millions to attack public education and push private schools. In better news, Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos has hit a wall in her efforts to privatize education, with several major reasons why. Number 1, she's incompetent. Number 2, she's incompetent. Number 3, she's incredibly stupid. And number 4, her powers as Secretary of Education are actually somewhat limited. DeVos is still doing everything in her power to ruin higher education, though, such as rolling back regulations protecting students from predatory colleges and predatory loan lenders. Nevertheless, the consensus is that DeVos will leave or be ousted soon, given her lack of success. One can only hope. This week also saw a horrific truck attack in New York. The alleged attacker is an Uzbek national who was a U.S. permanent resident, who has been captured by police and is now on trial. In the aftermath of the attack, Trump characteristically responded with a variety of hacked-baked nonsense and outright lies. Trump took the opportunity to slam New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer for immigration policy that was not only a bipartisan policy signed by George H.W. Bush, but one that Schumer actually worked on removing as part of the bipartisan immigration reform group during the Obama administration. In addition, Trump attacked America's judicial system and called for the unconstitutional imprisonment of the terror suspect at Guantanamo Bay, and publicly called for the death penalty. This is likely to make the case significantly more difficult, raising issues about tainting the jury. There were also 2 significant mass shootings this week, one at a Colorado Walmart that killed 3, and one today at a Texas church for which the death toll is at least 26. Naturally, there was no major call for policy changes related to guns from Republicans, though. On Capitol Hill, Republican leaders are grappling with their new tax legislation. The plan was originally supposed to be released Wednesday, but internal squabbling caused the deadline to be pushed back a day. Well, their plan has finally been released, and it is just as favorable to the rich and wealthy corporations as one thought it was going to be. The plan would repeal the alternative minimum tax and the estate tax, both of which are taxes designed to ensure that the wealthy don't weasel their way out of paying anything entirely. The bill would also reduce the number of individual tax brackets, cut rates on pass-through entities favored by the rich, cut the corporate tax rate by 15%, and permanently eliminate taxes on corporate profits overseas through a territorial tax system. How the bill would pay for these cuts is not completely clear, but the overall gist of it is that average Americans are probably getting screwed. The bill would eliminate tax credits for electric vehicles, cut tax benefits for college expenses, cap the state and local deduction at $10,000 and confine it only to property taxes, and, of course, some significant issues regarding the possible removal of deductions for mortgages. The overall headline is that average Americans will pay for tax cuts for big business and the wealthy. Of course, much of the bill for these tax cuts will not be paid for at all, and will instead open a larger deficit and debt, which Republicans will, of course, later on use as an excuse to cut important social programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. This is part of the Republicans' fundamental starve the beast policy, where they believe that denying the government the revenue it needs to do its job will force spending cuts. In other economic news, Trump announced the nomination of Jerome Powell to be the next Federal Reserve chairman. Powell is widely seen as the least controversial pick, and seems likely to continue the policies of the Obama-appointed Janet Yellen. In electoral news, we are now only a few days away from the Virginia and New Jersey gubernatorial elections. New Jersey is widely expected to be a Democratic pickup, while Virginia is still heavily contested. Republican candidate Ed Gillespie has been running racist and false attack ads against Democratic candidate and current Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam. Russian bots are also reportedly sowing discord in the race. The best 11 minutes of this entire year also came this week. A Twitter employee on his way out deleted Trump's Twitter account, and his account remained deleted for 11 minutes. For 11 minutes, that moron couldn't tweet. For 11 minutes, we did not have to worry about him attacking Gold Star family. For 11 minutes, we didn't have to worry about him provoking a nuclear war on the basis of his tweeting. The account has been restored, though, and so now we live with the moron tweeting again. This week's most stupid quote came from Energy Secretary Rick Oops Perry, who managed to say that fossil fuel use can help prevent sexual assault in Africa. In other news, me drinking bleach is going to get my neighbor to turn down that damn music. Well, that does it for this week's news. Thank you for watching The State of the Republic. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting content.